Hey guys, so this vlog entry is going to be called What's Next, and because it's called What's Next, there's a whole list of things that are coming out with this vlog entry that are going to affect a lot of upcoming episodes. So if you've watched the tutorial kind of walkthrough with business cards, the business cards have been ordered through Vistaprint. My internet has somewhat stopped acting up, so I was actually able to order those. We're waiting for them to arrive. The reason the business cards are important is because come the weekend of September 14th and 15th, we're going to be down in Racine for a cat show. And it's hosted by TICA, not CFA, so remember there's two different cat clubs when you're talking about cat shows. There's CFA, which is Cat Fanciers Association, and then there's TICA, which is the International Cat Association. And each club has different registries, and they acknowledge different breeds, and they have different breed standards, and they hold their shows a little bit different. So, unlike the last cat show that we did, this one's a little bit more important. I shouldn't say a little bit more important, it's a little bit more expensive, because I remember that we could squeak our entire budget in with an $82 budget. That was our expense list. This one, the booth fee alone is $100. Now it is held in the exact same venue that the last cat show was in, so hopefully we'll be able to make back our booth fees, but again, vending is never a guaranteed thing, so we're going to have to make sure we set ourselves up for success. We're going to have to dry run the booth. We're going to have to look at our displays. Now, I did have a list once I confirmed the booking. It's my checklist of some things that I wanted to make sure I was ready, or I have ready for this cat show. And we're talking booth fees, business cards, signage. Do I want to do a hotel this year? If I'm already sinking $100 into the show, and I'm already down to Racine, man, I remember having to get up for that last show, and I was so tired, and it was such a long day because of the drive. And I wouldn't be able to do any recording or post anything for this channel that whole weekend. You guys would have to wait earliest for that Monday for me to get back and like be done with work and come home and edit video in order to post it. You guys would be waiting for Tuesday. So I'm thinking I might want to bite the bullet. I might want to bite the bullet and get a hotel. We'll have to see how that goes. So already, you know, the $100 for the vending fee, we've sunk $25 into business cards, which we're definitely going to need before we go to a new vending site, because otherwise we have no decent way of doing our advertising. There's no take back, there's no free takeaway, there's no bounce back. We still have to do brochures for this show, and we're going to do a little bit of like minor merchandising. I do want to pick up one of those really teeny tiny like Christmas trees so we can do something with those ornaments. It being the beginning of fall, I might get some interest this time in the ornaments, the cat themed ornaments that we got up there. And I have had a few people who are on an international kind of like a trip, like a summer trip from Jamaica, and they've asked me to customize some ornaments for that. So there'll be some ornaments that are going to get made, and I'll put those over on the Patreon page. But speaking of Tuesdays, so I was kicking around looking at the analytics for this channel, and it seems like one of the most popular videos on this channel that was an actual drawing tutorial would have been the orangutans. Now, I had been kind of kicking around whether or not I wanted to do a whole new full tutorial with orangutans, or how I wanted to kind of move on from there. And I think you guys are really going to be interested and like what I've got. And I want to call it Tuesdays with Tommy. Now, Tommy is one of our Borneo Sumatran orangutan crosses that we have at the Milwaukee Zoo. Now, the interesting thing about Tommy is that when they do enrichment with Tommy, Tommy likes to watch Bob Ross, the painter. I kid you not. They take and they put like a DVD player and a screen in front of his enclosure, and he watches Bob Ross every once in a while. And he really gets into it. Now, when the keepers told me this, I was like, no way. So when in October of 2014, when I did that National Zoo exposition and I was vending there for 5 days and we had a zoo day, I decided to do an experiment. because in researching orangutans, and this may be something that not everybody who's really into primates, because I'm not really a primate person, primates, great apes like orangutans and lowland gorillas, have as many facial recognition points in their brain, visually, as a human being, which means that when one orangutan or one lowland gorilla looks at another one, they don't recognize it by scent or by body shape or by pattern. They recognize it facially, just like you would recognize another person. Well, that kind of interested me. And they've done some cognitive studies to suggest that lowland gorillas and orangutans share kind of a cognitive retention of memory to about like a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, supposedly. So now when you combine those things with the fact that Tommy enjoys watching Bob Ross, I decided to conduct a little experiment. And that experiment was to effectively, I had drawn a line drawing of Mahal. Now Mahal was a 5-year-old, I don't know if he was a Borneo or a Sumatran orangutan. He was an orangutan. And he had passed away in December of 2012. Now this is 2 years later. He had spent 3 or 4 years with the 2 orangutans that we have here up in Milwaukee, which was MJ and Tommy. MJ was acting as his surrogate mom. And eventually, like around like 5 years, he became very, very sick and he became septic, and it found out that he had gotten a tapeworm and he passed away, but it was a new variation of a tapeworm. If you want to, you can go online and you can research it. I don't want to get into the details right now. Anyway, so 2 years after Mahal's passing, now I've got this opportunity, so I decided to sort of cash in on it. Now I wasn't really obnoxious about it. I didn't have my video camera, I didn't set up my Canon, I didn't do anything. I basically went in, literally used the tripod that my camera's sitting on right now, and set up a makeshift easel and did a watercolor of Mahal with my back to the enclosure so that Tommy could look over the enclosure. Now when you're doing stuff like this, there's a lot of things you got to remember, and one of them is body language. When I look at you and I'm like this, you think I'm being very attentive to you, the viewer, or you, the person I'm talking to. Human mentality and human body language are totally different from almost any other thing in the animal kingdom. That having been said, if I were to do this to Tommy, he would be very submissive and he would turn away and he would not want to approach me. So the double benefit to putting my back to Tommy and letting him watch what I'm doing is not only does he get to be able to be interested in what I'm doing, but I'm not being aggressive with him, so I'm not a threat to him. And the other benefit is that while I'm working on my art, I could say that I'm promoting my art without promoting my art, because I'm at the same time kind of trying to figure out what Tommy's reaction is. Now what was incredible is the fact that Tommy is a very reclusive male orangutan, and because orangutans can be so much stronger than people, and they can hurt people so very, very easily, the keepers don't like to see a lot of very dominant, aggressive behavior from like the orangutans and the great apes, because they can hurt the keepers. So I don't know how they enforce it. I don't think I want to ask. But Tommy is very much encouraged to not be very aggressive and be very kind of submissive around people. Now on that note, he's also very shy, which means if a whole bunch of people come up to his enclosure and they're all facing like this, he goes to the back of the enclosure and he hides because he thinks he's being attacked. So the amazing thing is after about 30 or 40 minutes of me painting Mahal, and I don't know if I still have that painting or not, or if I even took a picture of it because it wasn't a really great painting. I was mostly focused on the points around the eyes and the points down around the cheekbones and the face, the nose and the mouth. So you have like 2 points here. You could probably look up where the points on the face are, but I did the line drawing, emphasis on these 8 points. When I painted it with those points. Now, because I have my back turned and I'm doing something interesting, he slowly winds up coming closer and closer and closer to the front of the enclosure. He was at some point hiding underneath some bedding or some. It was a lot of material that they gave the orangutans to. It was another enrichment thing. Eventually he wound up like watching me for some space of like 10 or 15 minutes before he wandered off. Now there is a really, really great ending to the story that I'm not going to blow now, but spoiler, when I actually talk about this story with Tommy, it's got a really cool ending. So I'm thinking that if we maybe, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a zoo membership, which is $125, maybe bring some friends with. And then we can do Tuesdays with Tommy, and I'll pick a random subject, and we'll maybe do a watercolor of it, or we'll do a loose pastel. So that might be something that would be really fun. Give it a thumbs up and leave me a note in the comments if that really interests you, of me going to the zoo and either painting something for the animals so they can watch me paint and you can see the reaction, and I'll put the camera that way. And you can watch the enclosure behind me while I'm painting. If that interests you, let me know. So I was thinking that doing another study similar to the one that I had done with Tommy, but maybe more in depth, would be kind of something that would be very interesting. Now, rather than just having a gorilla or an orangutan that would just watch me paint, I could just randomly paint stuff, that would be kind of fun. But to really kind of do a behavioral study, similar to what I did with Tommy and Mahal, and I'll get into that if we decide. If you really want to thumbs up this and give me a lot of feedback, if you're really interested in what this reaction would be, let me know. In April of 2017, the Milwaukee County Zoo had a terrible loss, and that terrible loss was they lost 2 of their lowland gorillas. That both Cassius and Naku had died from gastrointestinal infections from E. coli that they determined were brought in from the water system. The Milwaukee County Zoo has since treated that and prevented from any more bacterial infections from getting into the colonies. In conjunction with maybe Tuesdays with Tommy, kind of goes along the same lines of that behavioral study I did with Tommy while he was watching me paint this picture of Mahal. Except instead of it being a quick, maybe 1-hour study, maybe do something that was a little bit more in-depth, a more finalized and maybe gallery-ready piece. I chose to want to do this in charcoal because it's a very portable media, and the subjects of the study are also great apes. Now again, great apes have those 8 points of facial recognition and the emotional bonds, and the big difference between orangutans and lowland gorillas is orangutans are primarily solitary animals, and this is hugely important. Lowland gorillas live in groups, okay, and that's why the second study interests me. Now, tragically, the Milwaukee Zoo lost 2 gorillas in April of last year, in 2017. On April 12th, they lost Cassius, who was a silverback gorilla. He was 31. He had stopped eating, he had stopped showing interest in anything, he had stopped drinking. They decided to do an exploratory surgery to find out what was going on, look for bacteria in that. In order to do that, they had to put him under, and unfortunately, he never recovered from the anesthesia. He died the next morning. A few weeks later, Naku, who is a 17-year-old female, died on April 28th. It was very similar kind of symptoms. They did an exploratory and they found out she had become septic in her abdomen. Part of her abdomen, in fact, intestine, had actually died. They determined that she was going to have a poor quality of life, and they decided to euthanize her. Now, the real interesting and tragic turn at the same time is that Cassius and Naku had a baby girl, Zahara. She's currently being reared by her keepers, and they're hoping that another lowland female can adopt her into effectively taking care of her and rearing her like a real gorilla. But it is still a really big loss for the lowland gorilla community in that zoo because the gorilla groups are so closely knit. So what I'm proposing on this behavioral study, unlike the quick study I did with Tommy, but what I'm proposing is to take this finished line drawing and we're going to kind of work around the roughs of the edges, but we're going to leave the facial parts of the study for the zoo. And then we're going to take and we're going to do like we did with Tommy. I'm going to have to see if I can set something up with the keepers so that I'm working with the right group of apes. Milwaukee County has 2 groups of lowland gorillas, so I would want to make sure that the right group of gorillas was actually on exhibit and would have to be the group that was led by Cassius and had Naku as one of the females. But I want to see what the troop, if there's a reaction from the troop, if there's some kind of connection, and if Zahara is on display. If she has any reaction, and maybe what that reaction is to maybe pictures of her mom and dad, seeing as how she's so young yet, she's less than 2 years old, you know, her memories of her mom and dad while having only been a few months, if they would, she would retain those, you know, those facial memories and those emotional memories, and to see what her reaction would be, what the troop's reaction would be, if that varied from anything that Tommy gave me for a reaction from when I was doing the painting with Mahal. I would also be interested in finding out if anybody out there would be interested if I did a second study with Tommy. Now we know Tommy has a vested interest in art. Now the beautiful thing is that Tommy has shown me a significant interest and value in what I was doing with the painting with Mahal. Now sadly we did have 3 orangutans. We did lose Mahal in 2012 and his enclosure mate MJ, who was a female, died on September 14th, 2015. A year after I did my study with Tommy. They do have another female that they've added to Tommy's enclosure. But it seems that since I've seen him the last time, Tommy has become more bold, he's more comfortable around people. I was able to actually have him near the front of the enclosure and not be quite so fearful. He still won't look me in the face or be as, as intimidated by people or people in general. But he will kind of shy a glance at me. But with this study with the Mahal, I did get a very interesting response. What I'm interested with Tommy is, what would I get for a response if I did a picture of MJ? And what would that one be? So if you're interested in either one of the behavioral studies with the great apes, let me know. If you're interested in Tuesdays with Tommy and just drawing random stuff, let me know. Or if you want to go to the zoo and we'll do a life drawing, we could do that too. Let me know in the comments if anything, doing any artwork or any life studies or any behavioral studies on the subject would give you any kind of interest. But that's what's coming up, and I'll see you later. Bye.